Hello and welcome to the after party. I'm No White Guilt, and where's my order? The great order is with me as always. Appearing on the honors roll call today is the good girl, Judson, Keishi, Lawrence, Luke, Normal Style Crew, Omar, Paul, Richard, Rick, Ryan, Sean, Spartan Warrior Queen, Saint McFreeman, Stephen, Trent, Westward Thought, Zippy, and of course, Laura. I warmly appreciate your support, and I am most grateful that there are people like yourselves who are driven by a sterling character and a sense of destiny. As for the Super Chat crown winner of last week, the crown goes to a familiar name, Roy Danton, for investing a total of $100. An elephantin congratulations to you, and thank you, good sir. In second place was the prepossessing Laurel, investing $30. Thank you as well, fair lady. Super chat on YouTube or dig down into the video's description for a familiar alternative. Jared and I evenly share the super chats with our guests. Now, I'd like to say something briefly about the shooting in New Zealand. Of course, we reject the infliction of harm on all innocent people. That includes innocent non-white people, but it also includes the millions of our white brothers and sisters that are not only killed in terrorist attacks, but are murdered, raped, gang raped, beaten, disfigured, forced into lives of drug abuse and suicide, and psychologically and spiritually abused by anti-whites and the anti-white regime every single day across the globe. In the wake of this shooting, hands are covered in blood. But it is not the hands of those who serve white well-being. Rather, it is the hands of the anti-whites who, by way of their dominance in all of the power sectors and centers of our society, have forced upon our once tranquil Western nations, forced against our will, a multiracial witch's cauldron, a mixing of the biospirits of different peoples, an idea that has always resulted throughout all of recorded history in cultural arms races and sanguinary balkanization. The anti-white reveals his desire to inflict harm on us by way of his reportage and conversations about this shooting. When a non-white terrorist murders innocent white people, the anti-white excuses, rationalizes, and defends the non-white's actions. He immediately exonerates the community from which the non-white emerged. None of them are to blame for the atrocities committed by one. He immediately calls for all of the different races to come together, and he demands that the white race yield more, surrender more, have more understanding and sympathy, and make greater and greater efforts to accommodate the non-white peoples. The anti-white poses the question that implicates whites as the cause of the terrorist act. The non-white terrorist is in reality the victim of white racism. But when a white person commits a terrorist act, the anti-white indicts all white people. Western kind is to blame for the acts of one. He immediately calls for more restrictions, more censorship, more persecution, more prosecution of the speech, actions, and lives of whites in general, and specifically white people who love ourselves, our children, our history, and destiny. The anti-white poses the question that again implicates whites as the cause of the terrorist act. whites loving themselves, celebrating their heritage, and desiring to preserve their people, they are responsible for the terrorist. The anti-white concludes that the white terrorist is, in reality, a representative example of Western kind. History, both of the past and the future, indict the anti-white of the present for this and all such acts. Because by way of silencing those who care about our people, by cutting the tongues out of our mouths through censorship and deplatforming, ostracism, expulsion, and firing, they set the stage for an eternal warning perfectly articulated by President Kennedy. Quote, "Those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable." I implore the anti-whites to let us speak. Let us receive investments. Let us bring our message of hope and love to our beleaguered brothers and sisters across the West. Because if you don't, you, not those calling for peace, such as ourselves, but you, as President Kennedy articulated, are to blame for such atrocities. Brothers and sisters in white well-being, you are motivated by love. You did nothing wrong. Don't allow the anti-whites to intimidate you into self-censorship. It is your voice that not only we will recapture our destiny, but also prevent these sorts of acts. And now today, we are going to get tapped into Rory and Mother Hen of Verbo Tempestus fame. Rory and Mother Hen are not only the hosts of 3 shows on the Verbo Tempestus channel, Verbo Tempestus Live, The Hen House, and The Conduit, but they are also a happily married couple with, count them, 5 beautiful homeschooled children. They enjoy self-improvement and are working toward complete self-reliance. The courageous babysitter has just clocked in, so let's get tapped in before she taps out. Jared, I pass it over to you.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to be here, and thank you for our audience joining us at a bit of a different time. We've been throwing some different times at you, I know, and we appreciate you being flexible. I was traveling a lot this week, and Jason and I just had a very, very brief text message exchange earlier about the events, so I'm not going to add anything to it. I think Jason gave a beautiful statement on it, of course, which I am 100% behind. Just think about what that shooter did and the perception in the media versus the conversation that you're about to hear tonight and the kinds of people that are up here talking. That's what I offer you. But let's keep on the theme and do our guests the honor. We didn't know this crazy news was going to come in today, but we've been looking forward all week to having Rory and Mother Hen. We've spoken to them in some different capacities a couple of different times. And of course, I should note as well that Rory's show, Verbo Tempestus, is actually with a gentleman named Kaiser. And Kaiser, hello, is in the audience. We'll be speaking to you soon as well. But we did want to do a theme on community and family. And we have this opportunity to have Rory and Mother Hen, who are a married couple, who have a large family, as Jason just said. So we did want to make sure we got them on together. There were some things we wanted to go over with them. So Rory and Mother Hen, first of all, welcome to the after party. And we'll just start. I have some sirens in the background, so maybe I should mute in a second. We're going to get into all sorts of juicy things, but you could just start by telling us both a little about what motivated you to start speaking publicly and what you're hoping to do with your platforms.
Ladies first.
Ladies first.
Oh,
Mother Hen. Mother
I was
Hen.
going to let
I was going to let him go first on this one. He started before me on going public. So, but I, we've been through so much in our life, and we have so much knowledge to give. And in meeting all of the wonderful people in this community, we really saw an area where we could contribute, both to providing some guidance, motivating people, showing them just from a holistic perspective that we are beautiful and wonderful people and we can do anything if we put our minds to it. So for me, it's pretty much a motherly figure, if you will, to kind of help the younger generations within our communities, as well as the older ones, to show them that it's never too late and you can always pick up and start afresh and start, striving to go somewhere closer to your roots. So that for me is the where I stand.
So yeah, when we started the Bravo Tempesta show, which was actually, we're coming up on our 1 year anniversary. I know you guys just had yours as well. Ours is coming up in less than a month now, so we'll have to get something together for that. It very much started as a different kind of thing. It's morphed quite a few times over this year. At first, it was just kind of a way for Kaiser and I to have chats with our friends and kind of just have a good time. We didn't really think anybody would actually watch the show. And then people started to kind of tune in, and they liked some of our takes on the different news and stuff like that. But our most recent iteration, which is the way that I've really been wanting to take the show more recently, is, and Mother Hen's show was actually a good inspiration for me for that, because she has a very positive message. And the times that I had spoken out about with a positive message to kind of help our people, I got really positive results. And then to see such positive results that she received putting her show out from our same, kind of shared audience, I was like, well, this is something that's really needed, and we should continue that thread. And because I'd much rather be the person spreading positivity than the person sitting there telling you how bad things are in the world and giving you the news and blackpilling people even further. It's like, let's take a positive angle on this. And obviously I've always been in my life for my people. That's not something that's new. That's always been there. But now I actually have this vehicle and this avenue to express it and help people. So I figured I'd put it to the best use possible.
Yeah, well, you are. We've both been, Jason and I have both been on Verbo Tempestus at different points. And then you both joined our 1 year birthday celebrations about a month ago at this point. I can't believe it's already been a month. I don't know, maybe 3 weeks actually, but I'll have to check. But yeah, it was about this time in February. And then I've been tuning in to Mother Hen once we got wind of the fact. And some people in the audience are surprised. This is why you all have to follow Jason and I on social media. We said it over the last few days that they're a married couple, but I won't hold it against you. Yes, when you told us that you two were married, when Rory we were doing this impromptu, like the later streams on the birthday celebrations, and he's like, can Mother Hen come on? And I'd seen her participating in the chat, and I was like, sure, yeah. And he goes, oh yeah, by the way, we're married. I didn't know. And then only to find out that on Verbo Tempestus channel, Mother Hen and Big Cat Kayla, another friend of the after party, and someone Jason and I have spoken to a few times, both her being on this show and us being on her platform, does this show on Saturday nights with Mother Hen. And it's great to hear a show with two women talking about community, family, building the folk. Great stuff, different kind of energy, different kind of perspective, but all kinds of people can get a lot out of it. I'm a single guy listening to it, and I enjoy it. There's a different kind of energy and a different kind of perspective you get from that. And I say this a lot, this is a cultural movement. We're changing culture, we're changing community. That means that you need all types, all ages of people, all different perspectives, of course, within the fold of people who are advocating for and fighting for their white European heritage, because that's what the moment in history calls for, and that's what's ours. It is us to steward. Everyone here knows that, because no one else is coming to save us, as I sometimes say. But let's get into a little bit more about the community building. So you're both fostering community, and you speak a lot about community building, both online and offline. One of the reasons that I should say that I like the hen house is a mother hen will often relay stories, simple stories about what you two do for your neighbors, some experiences you've had with things like that, or family, both family that live near you or maybe even far away, but things that you do to keep in touch, to keep those ties strong. You just see a lot of great, wholesome stuff about all of that. And we'll be digging into that throughout the course of this whole show. But if you could just each give us your idea of what community building is, again, both online and offline. And Rory, why don't you start this one?
Yeah, sure. Well, what I noticed rather quickly, kind of as my channel built and I got this bigger audience and watching other people's shows, and there's very few shows. Obviously, you guys have a great audience and a great community that's within your, but you're one of the,
We
one of
do. We do.
the,
We're
yeah,
very grateful for that.
but you guys are one of the few. A lot of people within our kind of spheres of, pointing out what we need to do and, what's going on, especially a lot of the ones that are solidly black pilling all the time. The audience itself doesn't have a cohesion. They don't have a, hey, it's nice to see you, looking out for each other. There's a lot of kind of infighting and arguing about little semantics and things like that. And I was like, we need cohesion. And I think it's because people are so, as a general, our society as at large, where there's a lot of people that are just kind of lost and they don't have a forward direction. And so I kind of like the way you guys do it as well. You guys are putting out a message of positivity and helping people with self-improvement and, with the dialectics and things like that, with giving them tools to move forward. And I try to do the same thing where it's like, okay, well, let's do self-evaluation. Let's look at what we're doing for self-improvement. Let's look at what we're doing to reach out and help our community within here in this online sphere, as well as reaching out to your actual community and building something up that you can be proud of, and I always say, be the white pill that you want to be in the world, because we get too many black pills, especially online these days. So it's really good to build up that positivity. I think you need that backbone and that structure of positive people around you so that you just don't go just nihilistic and, lose your sense of what it means to be a person. You kind of lose your sense of things. So that's really what it means to me. Like, that's the end result. That's what you get out of it. Obviously, you can build on that quite a bit, like how to build community and all those things. And that's what we work on the show. But I think the end result is just to have that support unit of people working together, because that's the only way. Like you said, no one else is going to come save us. No one else is going to come going to do the things for us. We have to do it. And the only way to do that is to work together and build each other up.
Yeah, it seems like everything that we have in front of us is an almost impossible task. And family and community is nourishing. To have those people around you and have that support, at least it feels a little more feasible if you have that boost of positive energy from those interactions. And Mother Hen, big general question. I know this means a lot to you. Take it wherever you want. What is community and community building to you, online and offline?
How did you know it was big for me?
Just had a hunch.
Well, you can either live on an island all by yourself, and you can live out your day in peace and quiet, and you can do everything all by yourself. Or you can build a beautiful family, folk, tribe, and you can all grow to help each other, gain new knowledge, and build a beautiful, enriching future for your children and for your future legacy. I would choose the second choice. And how do you go about doing that? It starts at home. You build your family and you teach your children how to live amongst each other as well as within the family unit. But it doesn't just stop there. We're not selfish people. We need to welcome our neighbors. We need to see if our neighbors need help. But then it goes further than that. We need to build up our township, our tribe, and we need to find like-minded people and build relationships with one another and support each other. Because at the end of the day, that is our kinship. And then if you switch that over to an online perspective, it's the same thing. You can live 2,000, 4,000 miles away from me, and I can still find a way to help you. Whether that just be lending an ear to hear your issues and giving you some knowledge, or being a cheerleader for you, or even, as Rory does, he helps people all over within this online community to teach them how to get on to a social media platform, create a show, and be able to get their voice out. And it doesn't just stop there. And that's just all volunteer work. There are so many things that we can do. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I want to insert into the conversation this particular point, and that is that this slander that we often hear against community building virtually, community building online. We are together, folks, because of being able to build these communities online. None of us would have known each other if it weren't for building communities online. So there is nothing that is substandard or subpar by developing communities, building communities, and a love for our people and our heritage and the service of white well-being here online. And at the same time, it doesn't mean that there isn't a transition period, or not even a transition, because there's no reason to conclude that one obviates the other. I mean, we can have virtual communities and in life communities, in real life communities. And that is what we should be striving for. It's not just a matter of moving toward each other, as I've talked before, which we can do, which I've been talking with people that they are doing. This is happening this year, 2019. There are white positive people in the service to white well-being who are moving into the same communities, who are moving into proximity to one another. Now, that is not going to work for everyone. For some of us, it's going to remain a virtual realm, maybe for the totality of our involvement. But for some, it might remain just a merely virtual or only virtual for the foreseeable future. And yet there is nothing wrong with that. We are gaining strength and gaining momentum by way of this. This is not artificial. It is just another avenue by which we can build community. So, Mother Hen, I want you to continue. And if you could incorporate this right after I read these super chats. We got two super chats. Grizzly S, super chatting with $10, writing, traditionalism is the most revolutionary ideology of our times. That is a quote from Evola, saying, great job, you guys. Glad to be here. Thank you so much for being here with us, Grizzly, in our rapidly growing community in the service to white well-being. Barbie Chan, super chatting with $4.99. Thank you so much for that, Barbie. Some of my and I always saw her in that pink Corvette, and now here she shows up in our community. So finally get to meet her. Some of my favorite people on the stream tonight. Hail our folk, never give up. Thank you very much. Positive vibe. So, Mother Hen, communities online, our relationships that we're building online. You were just talking about Rory reaching out across hundreds, maybe even thousands of miles to assist people in our community. Could you speak to the fact that this community is a real community? We don't actually have to live a stone's throw away from each other to be part of the same community.
Well, definitely. I mean, everybody that's listening that I know, like Grizz and Barbie Chan, are both really good friends of mine. I would love for them, in the perfect world, for both of them, as well as both of y'all on the call and others, to just live in a beautiful community in a neighborhood so we can all just help each other, but we can't. But I think for me personally, and kind of what you were saying, me personally, I really think that a few of us crossed paths in this new technology so we can communicate with one another. And it's almost as if we're drawn together to help each other. And you really don't need to do much. This is a community. This is our family, our extended family. I mean, I know for a fact that I've got some family members that have completely shunned me out of their lives because of who I am. I'll just replace them. That's okay. I've got Barbie Chan, for instance. I've got Big Cat Kayla. They are my friends. We talk regularly. And we don't give up on each other, just as I don't give up on my neighbor. When she needs help, if she needs a cup of sugar, I'll take it to her. If there's a new neighbor that joins, I bring them a plate of brownies and I welcome them to the neighborhood. Just like if somebody is new in the chat on this stream, welcome them. Give them a chance to acclimate, because they're coming in from a very different world and they're coming into something warm that they haven't felt in a long time. So you just need to go ahead.
No, I didn't want to cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to close. It's fine to go ahead.
That's why I was coming in. Hopefully my timing was okay. My instincts are getting all right doing this a bunch. I've done a few of these at this point. I was just going to say there's one person in the chat that seems to be questioning this, and that's okay. We welcome questions. But I would just say, if the community weren't real, the online community is not a real thing, then the effects wouldn't be real. Jason and I only know each other because of Millennial, okay? Everything that's been built around this show and then spreading out on like conversations we're having now, cross-pollinating with Rory and Mother Hen. Mother Hen is absolutely right. We recognized in each other when we first began speaking over a month ago the same aims through the lenses of our different personalities, our different experiences, our different interests, but a vibration and energy of positive intention. And I know that that might lose some people. Vibration, energy, sounds a little woo-woo, but everything does come down to what your intention is. That sets the tone of how everything else, it's like a first domino that falls after it. If your intention before you get married, and hey, look at this is going to be a good segue. I swear I didn't plan it. If your intention before you get married is to have someone that could be candy on your arm so that you could show your status, you could show how cool you are, that you got this hot chick or whatever, or you landed this rich husband. Well, when the looks of the money go away, the marriage is going to fall apart. That's a totally different tenor. That's a totally different energy, you could say, than when two people have this idea that, yeah, of course, they have to have a connection and they have to be attracted to one another. But there's also a tremendous responsibility and, yes, a sacrifice at times. They're bringing together two family lines. What an awesome thing. Awesome in the true sense of the word. And going to have children together, create a life together, the duty, the bond, the mutual honor. That's a totally different set of intentions that's going to then ripple out into all of those different actions. So intention matters. We see actual results happening. We see actual lives change. My life is different because of the steps I've taken in this. After meeting Jason and everything that's opened up and us working together, we've affected each other. So I'm sorry, I'm not, I don't want to speak to someone that isn't on the air with us right now, but I have to push back a little bit. My life has been affected. So don't tell me that this isn't real, because my life has changed because of exactly what we're doing right now.
It also ripples out to the audience as well. We get messages all the time. We talk to people all the time that say, hey, your positive message and the things you guys say and the things you guys talk about has affected me in my real life. And here's the changes that it's made. Here's how it's affected me. So to say that it's not real and it has no effect is, I think, obviously having a real life community is important too. It's not an either or.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Both have their uses and both are functional and very good for us. So build up both of them. Why not use all the tools at your disposal? Why be only using the tools of the people that just happen to be next to you? Why not, build up both of those so you have the knowledge and expertise and the good intentions and the good conversations with people all around the world. We have this technology. Why not use it?
Yeah. And that's not to say that there aren't powerful elements of being in the same space with other people. There's absolutely no denying that, of course. But at any rate, what I was getting at before, since the two of you are married, of course, we know that some of the audience is very keen on hearing some perspective that you can help give, of course, to whatever degree is appropriate for you to share. obviously, I'll just say this now so I don't have to keep giving this caveat. Because you two are married and because the nature of what we're talking about, family and community, it bleeds into using personal examples. We know, of course, you'll be discerning on what to share, what not to share. We respect whatever you're going to share or withhold for your own privacy. So, we're not going to ask you any specific or pointed questions, but you guys are used to doing this. You've been doing this at your own streams. So to whatever degree you need to, we would love to hear your perspective on what brought you together, what makes your relationship work, perhaps examples of other people that you know, people from your family, elders in your family that you've seen go the distance and, have a decades-long, lifelong marriage. I know that people are really, really wanting to hear that. So if you could dig in and Mother Hen, why don't we do ladies first on this one?
Oh, excellent. I tell the story so much better.
Oh, a little competition there. See, you got to keep him on his toes. That's part of a relationship too, right?
She's right though. It's okay.
Well, yeah. How you got together, and then tell us how you stay together. Give us as much as you can. Let's get into this.
Yeah. So this is going to be all right. This is awesome. We, believe it or not, I'll come out the gate with this. We only dated for a month before we got married. We knew instantly the moment we saw each other that we were meant to be. On our very first date, Rory asked me all of the questions that you're never supposed to ask on a first date. Things about theories on life, religion, politics, everything. And clearly I answered him all correctly. That month actually felt like about 3 years, and we were inseparable.
Wow.
And the funny thing is, I just now realized, literally about a week ago, I looked at my parents and his parents and all 4 sets of our grandparents, and they have roughly the same story. And I'm not making that up. My parents only dated for 3 weeks before they got married.
Wow.
We're just open to, I don't know what more woo-woo if you want to call it, but it's definitely, we just knew that we were the ones for each other. And I think Rory might say this better than me, but he's always said, and I agree with him, that once you know, why wait? Why waste the time when you can start building a marriage, a relationship? Because once you sign that contract, once you get married, you're a completely different person. You're fully committed. And I think that's the other part of the marriage. They always say a successful marriage is where 100% is put in. But if you break that down, a total of 100%, that means each person is only putting in 50% to average 100%. Whereas a man and a woman need to put in each 100% into every single aspect of life and as well as the marriage itself. But you need to recognize when you need to evolve, where you need to grow together, and what you want to aspire towards together, and both work towards those goals.
Yeah.
Do you have any conception, and then we'll hear, of course, from Rory about some of this as we start getting into this. I know, again, sometimes I stop myself because you're like, is it going to sound too out there to people? But the most honest way you could say it, I mean, destiny, soulmate, or is it genetics and pheromones instantly responding to each other and your bodies telling each other this is the best match? How do you conceive of that moment? You've experienced love at first sight. That's what you're telling us, okay? Now, my parents ended up dating 2 years before they got married, but they met rather early in their late teens, and they still tell the story and paint it beautifully. They did 2 Christmases ago. My brother and I were like sitting there mesmerized. as they tell the story sometimes about the first night they met and some of the early parts of them getting together. But even though they waited 2 years, ultimately, they basically said the same thing too. They saw each other at a social function. They were with mutual groups of friends that knew each other, but they had never met before. And it was like something from a movie. They locked eyes, things stopped. They went over to each other, spent the rest of the night talking, and something in them knew right away. So I've heard this story from my parents too. I'm happy to say that they're still together. And Mother Hen, just so you know, my mother, I say this sometimes, was a full-time homemaker herself. My brother and I thank her all the time to this day. It's an amazing gift that she gave us. If you can do it, do it. I'm the product of that, and it's the most beautiful thing in the world. Your kids will remember that forever. But anyway, how do you conceive of that? I know sometimes I could imagine maybe you sometimes don't even want to pierce that mystery, that maybe that sometimes there's something there that you don't even want to consciously fully know. It might take something out of it. But how do you, if you have anything to say to that, how do you conceive of that love at first sight experience?
Yeah, it's something you question, right? You only hear about it in movies or whatever else. This can't be real. So you question it. Naturally, Rory and I did question it. I think the best thing I could tell you is when I was a little girl, my dad would always hold my hand while crossing the street or whatever else, but he would always squeeze my hand 3 times. Later on in life, I asked him, "Why do you do that? Why do you squeeze my hand?" And he says, "Well, that's me telling you that I love you. And one day you're going to meet the man of your dreams. And when you hold his hand, you're going to feel that chemistry and you're going to know that he's the one for you." So, and that is it. You get this rush, this adrenaline, this euphoria. And yes, it could just be a triggering chemistry effect from smelling the pheromones or the hormones. It could just be that. It could be your energy sources that are just in complete, succinct balance, that are just feeding off of each other. It could be that as well. It could be all sorts of different things. At one point in time, Rory and I questioned, do we believe in, I've forgotten the terminology, but where you live multiple lives, resurrection and
Yeah, being a soulmate and
right.
reincarnation,
And
or metempsychosis is another way to say it.
yeah, and as we got so close to one another, we actually kind of, is that possible? Was that a reality? We almost had like flashbacks of previous lives together. It was that weird.
Mm. Rory,
That's it. Yeah, Rory, go ahead.
speak to this from your side? How did it feel as a man? Because I'd like to know.
It's really strange because I'd like to do a comparison of, like, obviously as men we go through our lives and we're like, you can look and say, hey, that's an attractive woman. It's not like that. You know what I mean? That's just a really basic, like, hey, she's attractive. It's nothing like that. It's like you look at this person, you're like, it's hard to really put into words. It's almost like you're just drawn to them. And it's like, okay, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to be with this person. And it was just really amazing that obviously she felt that too. And so we hit it off right away, and we've been together ever since. But it's something completely different than just a kind of real basal attraction of, oh, hey, they're good looking. It's a completely different level of, I don't know, of just being connected to each other. You feel like it's almost like a reconnection, if you will. Like, hey, I've always known this person and I'm just becoming reconnected with them.
I mean, I haven't experienced it, but what I'm trying to gather from this is that, you were talking about the attractiveness, and that's just your physical eyes, right? Your biology, your predator eyes. And it sounds like what you each are saying is that you met each other on every cylinder, every level that a human being can experience and is. Like, every cylinder is lit up and every potential or part of yourself is seeing or recognizing. And when I say seeing, I mean more than just with your physical eyes. You're
Yeah.
seeing the fullness of each other.
And then that's just reinforced whenever you actually get to talk to each other and you get to go on that first date and actually interact with each other in a space where you can have a comfortable conversation. And like she said, we talked about, and they just came out. It wasn't like I was sitting here giving her a 20 questions of, hey, how do you think about this? What do you It wasn't like that at all. It was just like, that's where the conversation flowed and went. And we had just this natural, even though we didn't necessarily agree on everything, we had this just understanding of all these topics to where we could have these conversations. And over our time of being married, we've been married for quite a while now. We have 5 kids. It's been a while. But a lot of those things within those categories have changed in that first conversation, but we've grown together along the way. There's always growth. I think that's one of the main things is people have this ideal of what they kind of have a preconceived idea of, hey, what is this perfect person that I want? And it doesn't really work like that. It's the right person will, like you said, you'll know when it's the right person and they'll present themselves to you. But if you have like a preconceived condition of all of these conditions, these XYZ conditions, you're just setting yourself up for failure. Seems to be what I've seen from other people. It seems,
Yes. Before we go a little more into the present and what's led to you continuing this successful relationship in your family, I caught someone in the chat, the regular chat before, I think saying something like an experience like this takes 2 people that are mature and have gotten to a certain place in their own lives to some degree. I'd like to hear from each of you looking back on where you were right before you met each other. Was this something that shocked your system into changing, or were you on a totally different course? Were there some things in your life that were maybe a little messy, or can you look back and say that you had done work to get yourself attenuated and mature and self-actualized so as to be able to properly respond to this kind of moment where you meet someone that's that right for you?
I would say, just for my personal, where I was at, I think that I definitely was not what most people would think. Oh, you got to be in the right place. You have to have your mind in a certain position. You have to have all your ducks in a row, or whether that be financially or in your career or mentally or any of those things. Those are things that we have grown together along the way. I think. Obviously, I had been through terrible relationships, so I think, honestly, I think one of the biggest factors was I wasn't actually looking, and I think Mother Hen can agree to that as well. She wasn't actually looking for anyone. It gotten to a point where, hey, I've had some terrible relationships. I'm going to take a lot of time off and just not even think about that, and that seems to be kind of a thing that for both of us, when you're not looking, that's when it happens.
Yeah.
How difficult is that? Just so sorry, Mother Hen, but and I've heard this before. This don't be looking. It's sort of almost. It's not to say. It's not to say don't try or not or don't better yourself from day to day or anything.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah.
But I mean, it's just this. It's almost the opposite of the sort of advice that we receive, and then we apply in other places. I mean, you're not going to find your dream job by not looking.
Yeah.
You're not gonna find the dream house by not looking. You're not going to, find the best neighborhood by not looking. It's everything else seems to be it's the exact opposite track than this. I mean, it's interesting. It's a fascinating subject. I will say, and I'll just also point out that the fact that this is so ineffable, the both of you, it happened to the both of you. You are the other side of the individual who this happened to, And it's both with you both here. It's still kind of a difficult thing. It's still kind of an ineffable thing to describe. So it's really a remarkable, it's really something that's remarkable when it happens. I find that fascinating. I would like to ask the audience too, if you would please, to participate in getting this information out to our sphere, the white positive sphere, and anyone else that's out there. So please like the stream, subscribe to the channel. If you have not, click the bell. If you have not, make sure if you have subscribed and liked and click the bell that all of those things are still the case, because YouTube continues with their chicanery. If you could also post the stream on your Facebook and Minds accounts and anywhere else where you have social media platforms, please post it there as well so we can get this information out to people. I would be grateful for that. And finally, if you are interested in super chatting, you obviously can do so by way of YouTube, Google and YouTube. But you can dig down into the description just a little bit for a familiar substitute, and you will find it there. So just wanted to toss that in. And Mother Hen, you can pick up where I cut you off.
Well, I want to clarify there real quickly on the not looking portion, at least from my perspective. That doesn't mean like, oh, if a woman spoke to me, I was gonna like turn around and run the other direction and like not have interactions with people, right?
That doesn't.
It's like, oh, a woman spoke to me, oh my god, and run away. It's not like you're actively disengaging from interactions with people. It just means like, and obviously, kind of someone said in the chat, like men are always looking, well, to an extent, like your mind is always processing interactions and things like that. But it's one of those things where it wasn't in my forward mind. It wasn't something I thought about like, oh, I need to find my next girlfriend. I need to, find a woman to be with. It was just, hey, I need to take some time, realize, kind of get back to who I am. And, I had just gotten a new job. So I was kind of focusing on that for a little bit, kind of get settled in. I had just moved to new cities. I was trying to get settled in. And so that, so I wasn't, like I said, it wasn't like I was disengaging from conversations with people or not interacting with people. It was just I wasn't actively seeking a relationship at the time.
Mother Hen?
A week before he asked me out, I said, I'm never going on another date again.
That's how it always happens. I hear that all the time. Hey, I'm never going on another date again, okay?
I was so sick and tired of the immature little boys that I was meeting. And I wanted a man. I wanted somebody who was going to take care of me, take care of the children that we'd have together. And there was nobody meeting those qualities. And so I just wrote it off. And I said, I'm just going to focus on myself and focus on just being who I am and figuring out who I am. And then we saw each other. And then he asks me out and on the spot. And I thought, okay, well, but it's going to be on my terms. And we're going to go to familiar places. And I'm thinking in my head, what am I doing? You just said you're never going to go out on another date again. What is happening? And we went out and phew, that's it. I'm so happy that he actually gave me that look, that intriguing, mysterious look, and walked up to me and said something to me very calmly. And we just giggled. And then he asked me out. I mean, that's it. That's how he got me.
So what kind of day-to-day nuts and bolts work does it take, though, to maintain where you are now 5 kids later? Let's talk about that and give people that perspective too, about the effort and the thought that has to go into maintaining your relationship and then a family.
Okay, I guess I will start since Rory's being quiet. It takes a lot of work. One good piece of advice that we live that keeps us going is our small things theory. We live that through everything, but it starts at home. We don't waste any energy on small things. Anything that's petty or small, that's just a temporary roadblock, we don't really spend our energy on it, because we have very little energy to manage a household of 5 children in one day. So we need to not only focus on just the big things that need to be done, but we also have to keep each other in a positive thinking mentality. So if there is a negative situation, if there is something that's going on, so-and-so stole this toy from me. Okay, well, and you have to break it down and you have to deal with each of these situations. But I don't know, that energy of the children smiling at the end of the day or throughout the day, it fills me up. It gives me enough energy to keep going. Some people it doesn't. But for me, it's as simple as that. I try to look at the small things in life and enjoy them.
That's great advice, by
answer?
the way. Yeah, that's great
Yeah.
advice, by the way. Just for anything. I mean, when I was talking about, I think it was 2 or 3 going free streams ago, I was talking about not allowing yourself to become depressed by the things that are happening in the world, the things that are happening to our people, so that you can just, the more depressed you are about these things, the less productive you are, the less you can actually do for the cause and for our people. So one of the things that I recommended was taking up, like, feeding the wildlife and learning the names of all of the different wildlife in your area, so that when you see them, it's an occurrence for you. It's something that's small, but it has meaning. And specifically, I related that day that I was very busy that day. I'm very busy just about every day, but I came into the kitchen and I looked out the window and there was a red-bellied woodpecker on the tree. And I hadn't seen one in months. So there was like a moment there where I was reconnected with nature, and everything, all of the busyness of the day, all of the weight on my shoulders was gone. And so it is the small things. And so that's advice that can be applied in all spheres of our lives. So thank you for saying that. Did you have anything? Go ahead.
All of our kids, we love to watch all of the birds, and I did watch that episode, and I was smiling the entire time because it is as simple as that. It's just that you have to keep positive. And another thing that I love to do is we talk throughout the day. What are we going to have for dinner? What do you want? What would you like to see on the plate? So we can put a big pat on our backs at the end of the day to say we did a good job and we did something that contributed to the well-being of our family. So it's full circle, and you need to close it out each day.
And the small things goes both ways. Like small, kind of taking in the small moments is a good thing. But then there's the other side of it, the things that are real small that kind of worry you, the small not good things. That's where it really formed in the beginning. Our kind of talk is to say, we would say to each other, hey, small things. And that was a way to remind each other that, hey, that thing you're worrying about, it really doesn't matter. Save your mental and save your mental energy and worry for when the big things come up, because you only have so much. I think we talked about this when I had the Great Order on the show. We talked about that a bit, and yeah, you only have so much mental energy to give out. Let's not waste it on the small things. And if you have someone else there to kind of be your partner and to tell you, hey, you're really worrying about something that doesn't matter, it helps you kind of just release that tension of, you know what, they're right. Why am I sitting here focusing on this thing that really doesn't matter and wasting all this mental energy and the time when I could be out having a good time with my family instead of sitting here stressing about this thing that really doesn't matter?
Yeah, you have to be discerning with your awareness. I frame things a lot in terms of boundaries, and I like that idea of the semi-permeable membrane we all remember from grade school biology.
Mm-hmm.
lets the bad stuff out, but you can let the good stuff in. I like what you said about the flip side of the small things. I'm such a big believer in that gratitude about the small things, just the littlest details. I could draw so much energy from, so much positive energy and gratitude from the simplest, smallest things. And those fill you up, they shore you up. They're great in and of themselves, but it just so happens that if something big happens that really does need your energy or really does need some wisdom and perspective, appreciating those little things has built up your energy so that you're better equipped to deal with those actual big things that do need your serious attention. Why don't we turn a little bit into parenting as well? Now, of course, there are some things maybe you have to do to prepare yourself for that responsibility, but all the parents that I hear from also say, in a different way, something similar to what you said about how you two met romantically, that there's no such thing as being ready, that a lot of this is going to surprise you along the way. So, what was it like when you first became parents, and what can you tell other people in this community about your experience being parents? I don't really have a specific question. Maybe we'll get, once
Yeah.
you guys start talking about it, we'll dig deeper into it. But we'll just like a funnel. We'll start general. We'll get more specific.
No, you're absolutely right. There's no way to properly, fully prepare for being a parent. You know, you could read the books that say, "Hey, here's what to expect when you're expecting. Here's the kind of the medical things of what it's going to be like with your partner going through pregnancy, and here's what you can expect, kind of physically from the baby." In the first few months or the first year, whatever. And those things are helpful. You know, they kind of give you a guideline of, okay, if I see this happening, this is what I should do. But it's really just kind of a baseline. And the thing I think that people kind of puts fear into people is the being mentally prepared, being financially prepared, and all those things. You can never, unless you're a multimillionaire, you really are never going to have enough money to to give your kid every single thing they ever want. And that's part of the things you learn becoming a parent. But once at least for me, like once I held our firstborn, right after she was born, it was like a light switch. It just switched to where I already, wanted to be a parent, and, it's not like I was anti babies or didn't want children, but there was just something in me that switched to where I knew instantly that I was going to do whatever I had to do to, make this kid grow up happy and healthy and protect them. And it's, it's a euphoria, which it really has no match when you see your child being born
A
and then
friend,
you hold your child for the first time. It's uncomparable.
yeah, a friend of mine who, the little we know each other, Rory, you actually remind me a little bit of, funny enough, said that when his first daughter was born, uh, he felt like you kind of get these superpowers all of a sudden, like extrasensory perception. I don't know, he just
Yes.
like said,
Yeah.
like I'm sure there are biological elements to it, but he just felt like he got these different sense of awareness. And
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. A sense of awareness, which you didn't know that you ever had. Maybe you did have it, but it was just kind of muted because you didn't need it, I guess. And it's like I said, that light switch just comes on. That's those senses, all your cells just go into full motion and being alive, and it really is uncomparable. And I could tell you, as a father of five, every single time that you have a new child and you feel that sensation again.
mm,
Obviously, it's a touch more exhilarating with the first one, because that's just your first child. That's the first time you've held a child that you've made. But with every child, you get that sense of just pure euphoria, knowing that you've created a life and you're going to do what needs to be done to protect them and those type of things.
yeah, and mother hen. So on that note, anything about children, and maybe a way to start is the kinds of things that you might say to a young woman who hasn't had her first child and asks you as a mother of five, well, what is it like, and what can I expect, and how can I be a good mother?
Well, when women do call me and ask me that, I say, my door is open, my phone is on, call me anytime because you're going to have a million questions. And there's not one thing I could say other than you need to own it. You are the adult in this situation, and it's going to be okay. And you need to learn some basics. There are some things that every mother needs to learn, especially for a newborn. But as they start getting a little bit older and start getting into that independent realm, really let them be free. Let them explore. Let them figure out who they are. Don't hold them back. And that's the one thing that most mothers don't get told, especially with today's society. It's the complete opposite. And so if you really want people, children, to grow up really close to and connected to your roots, to your ancestors, and to who you are, let them learn who they are. Let them explore. And just like you're going to do when you're a new parent, you're going to have to explore. You're going to have to figure out in an instant. You know, there are a lot of questions that are going to be asked of you. If you're going to give birth at the hospital or at home, how are you going to do that? And if you give birth at a hospital, you have to answer a million questions. You know, are you going to exempt yourself from certain vaccines or this, that, or the other? Or are you going to not want a C-section? There's all these big life-changing decisions that you have to make right then and there. And so there are some things that every woman needs to know, and every future father needs to learn and know before they go in. But as part of how to be a parent, that's you. That's who you are. And you're going to grow to become a parent as your child grows with you. There's no prescripted life. Just like today, there's no prescripted life for you independently.
Have you seen any glimpses of what you were saying of your children naturally expressing or exploring who they are in terms of their heritage, any kind of racial memory sort of thing? Because I know we spoke about that a little bit, Mother Hen, and we were talking about the Red Ice interview that I did, and you had recognized some things, and I'd like to hear about it from your own perspective too. But since you said something about letting your kids explore who they are, anything interesting in terms of that?
They just have this knowledge. It's you know, there's that big theory of genetic knowledge that's passed down. You know, who knows if it's true? Nobody's found it in our DNA, but they just have this knowledge. Like my son one day just turned around and said something, and I literally had a flashback to my grandfather saying and the exact same thing and with the same facial expression, and he never met him. And I haven't asked them directly because that's a very sacred thing for me, for them to explore and build until they're at a certain age. But, you know, I really think that they are connected. I mean, with my mother and my father, they are really connected, and my mother and father are still alive. And they are very connected with them, and they hold the highest regard for my parents. They respect them as elders, and they really learn from them. And I think as time goes by, when my parents' time is for them to pass on, they will be devoted to continuing on their legacy. They understand the importance of carrying on that legacy. And they are told every single day, reminded of our ancestors and who they were and how beautiful it is that they are the creation of all these ancestors of the past. They are actually helping us with genealogy, learning along with us who they were.
We have
So,
a
yeah.
Sorry about that, Mother. We have a question for you and a couple of super chats as well. We have DB Cooper dug down into the description. He found what was not an old typical network by which we super chat, but he found a new one. And super chatting with $9, he writes, just testing one of the alternative investment routes. White well-being needs to go viral. Thank you very much for that, DB Cooper. It worked. So there are alternatives. As I say, there's one that's very familiar to you all, has been resurrected from the dead. Bill Ahora super chatting with $5. Mother Hen, is that your actual photo? Photo is quite beautiful, I'll say, very respectfully. Don't want a punch in the nose from Verbo.
Oh my goodness, that's funny. No, that's Maria Orsic. I'm sure tons of people in the chat know who that is. I will say though that it is very similar to Mother Hen's look. So,
well, we do have a question directly for Mother Hen. Kriegsdale writing, do you have any advice for people who get red pilled after marriage and find themselves married to anti-whites? This is something that happens all too often. And so I will toss it over to Mother Hen to get her advice.
My first question is, do you love her? If you do, find a way to get through to her. And after that, I can't give you any advice. I'm sorry. I mean, you're on your own path. I think one of these other fine gentlemen on the call could possibly give better advice. But to me, if you once had love, you need to tap back into it and find that little itty bitty pathway that's still there and rekindle that fire. Maybe disconnect from everything for a while. Go away to a small cabin and just to both agree to not talk about all this political stuff, all of this stuff that just is segregating all of us, and just reconnect and just make a vow to one another again on new goals forward, and in hopes that you can ease or find a different way of communicating to her to help her see the light.
I like that about simplifying, getting away from everything, just the two of you. Jason, were you about to say something?
Well, it's obviously a very difficult situation for a lot of people. And throughout the years, I mean, this harkens back to the topic that we actually started the conversation with, which was the IRL versus the virtual communities. I will have you all know that this movement has been around long before there was an internet. All of the meetings were IRL. Nothing magical happened because they were IRL meetings. When we were having IRL meetings, we didn't have the reach that we have now. We didn't have the momentum that we have now. So this idea that this is somehow substandard relative to IRL meetings is preposterous. What happened was there was a genuine fear at one point that people were going to end up just sitting in their houses and never doing anything other than just complaining on the internet. That never materialized, folks. It's time to just go ahead and get rid of, I mean, why does it take society so long to shed things, to cut them off, to truncate them once they're no longer needed? Just get rid of this idea that people are going to sit in their houses and do nothing but sit on, type on the computer and not participate in their communities. Where do you think all of the Tea Party communities were built before you saw them out in the streets? Where do you think all the MAGA communities were built before you saw them in the streets? So just go ahead and dump that idea. But I mean, back to what did I say? I wrote a note down here, and now I can't remember what that note was referencing.
Was it about the anti-white spouse after one gets red pilled? I know some people in our audience.
I'll talk to that, but it was about earlier in the conversation, and I was going to toss it in. But as far as the anti-white spouse goes, and then if I can remember what that is, I'll come back to it. But as far as the anti-white spouse goes, this is a really difficult thing because back in the day, we had a lot of people that came to the meetings and would come to these rallies, and their spouses hated them for doing so. They said they were involved in these, they would refer to them as cults. Everything that the regime would refer to anybody who got together in opposition in some way, large or small, to the regime was cults, it was maniacs, it was all of this sort of ad hominem attacks. And so there were these big fissures in relationships, and it has been my firm position from that time to this, and will continue to be the case, that we need to be building families in service to white well-being. That means a husband and a wife who both are involved in the service to white well-being, rearing their children in that environment. Because if you are not doing that, the participant of that union is really just a single. It's like they're not married, and their children, very often, it's maybe less than 50-50 that they end up coming the direction of white well-being. Why is that? Why? Because there is so much to lose when you come this direction, so little to gain, at least superficially. And so we need both members moving forward in those relationships. So my admonition to people who go free once they are with their spouse, or their spouse ends up going anti-white, getting worse, or going the complete opposite direction from what they were before. Maybe they were neutral before, and now they are becoming rapidly anti-white because they're imbibing more of these toxins, etc., from the anti-white narrative. In those cases, it is my firm position that you need to do everything you can based on your situation to bring that spouse to white well-being. Now that can begin with the little things. That can begin with simply pointing out when you see something anti-white on the television, a commercial where they are, a commercial for cell phones or something, and it's always the white person always has the non-white spouse, or the guy selling the lemon to you of a car is a white, like, feeble man, and then the guy who's selling you the Cadillac is a robust non-white man. Just to simply say in their presence, how anti-white is that, if that is all you can do with that spouse? But you need to be bringing them the direction of white well-being. You cannot rear a healthy family, or we cannot have this anymore for the good of our people. You cannot rear a healthy family when you have a spouse that is consistently, whether it's continually or continuously, advocating some part or in toto anti-white doctrine to your children. It's a massive clash. So you need to be working on them in some way, shape, or form to bring them around. Ultimately, I can't imagine an environment in which, me personally, where I could be with someone who was the least bit anti-white. That would be just utterly intolerable. And I've let everybody know with whom I've had relationships that if you are going to get in the way of my service of white well-being, then and it's going to be a white well-being or you, the decision is easy, and don't let the door hit you in the ass. So some of us have to be that courageous and that staunch if we are going to survive as a people. The rest of us, if your spouse is going bad, or you have gone good by going free, then you need to give them the little nudges, the little pushes to help keep them going in the right direction. It doesn't have to be a transformation overnight, but it definitely has to be in the direction of health. Get them going the right way, or you're just going to end up with a heartache in your house. You're going to end up with battles in your house. And I will say this is the thing that I was referencing earlier that Mother Hen had said, actually was not connected. That's why I was confusing it. And that is, Mother Hen, you mentioned that you lost some family members because they find your views intolerant. No, you lost no one. You got rid of sick and dangerous people. That is how we have to view this. If there are so-called loved ones out there, and they are willing to put anti-white ideology ahead of their concern for you, their love for you, then they should be dead to you. That's how we need to view the world. We are not being shunned from their healthy society. No, we are cutting off the sick limbs. We are trimming back the dying branches. We are getting rid of the things that can sicken us. You cut off a gangrenous limb, and that is what we do to family members or friends who decide that they are so anti-white, they can't tolerate a position that isn't also anti-white. We are taking their position as the default correct position, as the default moral position, when we conclude that we are the ones who have been shunned by them, that we are the ones who are not being invited to their parties. Screw them. You would never attend the party of an anti-white. You would never invite some sick person into your home, into the presence of your children, no matter what their title was prior to that, whether it was aunt or uncle or whatever. This is the time that we have to be courageous. These are the days when we have to stand up for what is really valuable and what is really meaningful. And this idea that is passed down through the white community, that family comes first, is something that has to take a secondary position to white well-being. Family comes first isn't dethroned. It is not no longer something that is positive or important in our lives. It's now something, though, that is in a secondary position, because do you know what? If you take a stern look at what it means when family comes first, you're going to find out that the well-being of our community has to come first for your family to be healthy and well. If you're not putting the welfare of our people and our community and the service to white well-being first, you are not doing right by your family. There is going to, you can imagine it this way. There were times in human history when family members, no matter what their titles were, mother, father, cousin, nephew, when they came down with a communicable disease and they had to be separated from the rest of you, didn't they? You couldn't be in their presence. Why? Why couldn't you still hug them? Why couldn't you still love on them? Why couldn't you still kiss them? Why? Because if you did, you would communicate the disease to the rest of the family. That is how you have to look at anti-whiteism. This is a disease of the mind. It is as much a disease, as any smallpox or leprosy that you could see upon the flesh. It is a disease of the mind, and it is blackening the mind. It is devouring our gray matter inside, devouring the flesh of our brains, the flesh of our souls. Those are people you need to rid yourself of quicker than a relative with leprosy. Good God, at least you can get medicine for that and take care of it like this. You can't do anything that happens overnight when it comes to anti-whiteism. It is a lifelong process of going free. Rid these people from your lives. We all have to do this. And let me just also point out that you all have to help me. I will help you. You all will help Jared. We all have to help each other view these things from a new perspective. We are like boulders in the middle of raging rivers against this inertia coming down at us from upstream, this inertia of learned vocabulary, this inertia of learned lexicon, this inertia of learned perspective. And we have to turn this tide back against them. We have to turn the tide so that we now view it from a place of where we are the moral actors, they are the immoral actors, where we are the champions and they are the villains. That is the narrative in which we have to live. So, my dear mother hen, you were not shunned or ostracized by these people. No, you have gotten rid of that bad. You have gotten rid of the sick so that it doesn't further infect you and your family.
Like my husband tells me, the law of diminishing returns, right?
Yeah, I live my life by that in all aspects. Yeah, it's crucial. I think that we've been through. Luckily, we've only had to shut off a couple family members because the vast majority of them, they already held these sentiments. They may not have known how to express them in the best way, but they had them, and they weren't anti-white. They weren't working against us by any means. So that's a good thing.
And I just want to, and Jared, you go. I just want to say really quick. It was just like 5 days ago. I was thinking about someone that I have now is dead to me, and I almost said that they stopped talking to me. So we all do it. We all do it. We all have this inertia of viewing our lives and our world in this way that is deleterious for us. But we are going to help each other. You will be my crutch. I will be your crutch. And we will eventually reach that point where we are in the healthiest place and have the healthiest view so that we can then march forward to recapturing our destiny. Jared, I pass it back to you.
How are you two preparing your kids to meet this fallen world where there are these anti-white messages? And conversely, what are you doing to build up that sense? I know it's already in them naturally, but expose them to their heritage and develop that sense even more.
Do you want to take this, Mother Hen?
No, I want you to start off.
I think that it starts with mentally preparing them, letting them know that we started at a very early age. We didn't really kind of coddle them to an extent. Like we'd let them know, hey, the world's a dangerous place. If you do X, if you're, and I think it's a good way to teach children when they're misbehaving rather than just saying, hey, that's a wrong thing to do. You explain to them why, like, obviously this is wrong because it's, hey, it's hurting X person or you're doing this, but also if you do this in the real world outside of this home, when you get older, this is going to happen to you. And it's the same way with letting them know that the world's a dangerous place. There are people out there who want to harm you. There's people out there who want to change the way you think. When we do let the kids watch TV, they'll say, hey, can we watch this show? And I'm like, no, you can't watch that show. And I'm like, why not? It's because, then I tell them, hey, because it's propaganda. It's trying to work against you. It's trying to brainwash you. That's not proper things that you should be learning. Let's watch something where you can actually learn something appropriate and learn a skill. Let's improve ourselves. And that's kind of on the mental side of it. But obviously I'm one of those people that thinks that, hey, the world's probably going to get worse before it gets better. So I also like to train the kids with physical skills, things like that. Teach them to hunt, teach them to live in the woods, teach them how to do these type of things, teach them skill sets that are going to help them, teach them carpentry, teach them how to cook and do all these skill sets that are going to be useful to them down the road.
Motherhead.
Well, it's actually a difficult one because it's so ingrained in who we are that it's hard to step out and actually kind of identify what we do. It's how I was raised, and so I'm just carrying it on. We our kids are very much aware that there are people out there that are anti-white, and we tell them about the stories of the world, like the world news, and why your aunt acts like this during the Christmas party at grandma's house. And so they are very much aware. And my sister-in-law does not hold back at these events, which is very unfortunate. And the fortunate part is that she's all alone in that rant. Nobody else is backing her up specifically. And so I think that's actually been very good for our children, not just us, but also their other aunts and their other uncles and their grandparents, all still kind of standing up and protecting even them. But we do sit and actually take the time to explain everything to them. And I know that sounds daunting. And I know it sounds like, geez, how do you have the time? But you just do it while you're scrubbing the dishes. And that's a great way to do it, by the way, because you're going to get very angry when you talk about this with your children, because at the end of the day, you want to protect them. You want them to have a wonderful life when they grow up. And you see all of these things that are just threats. And one day you're going to die and they're going to be all by themselves. So number one, they need to have a bond with each other and be able to trust each other and be able, like a pact, a tribe, to be able to support each other for when mom and dad are gone. But they need to be able to be leaders. They need to be alpha characters. Both Rory and I are very much alpha, and all 5 of our children so far that we've identified, because 2 of them are pretty young. But so far, all of them are very much alphas. And what we are doing, that question of, what are you going to do in life when you grow up? Just as simple as that. And getting them to identify what they want to do and walking them through that process, getting them to put a business plan together. Well, how are you going to address this? How are you going to address that? And then, of course, from a government perspective, what the government does. I was just talking to my daughter today. She was asking me, so what is the government doing with our taxes now? And I told her, and she goes, I really wish they would just reduce these taxes. This is ridiculous. That is our hard-earned money. And, do they not know that we have 5 children in this house to feed? And, and she gets very passionate about that. And I said, well, how are you going to handle that? How are you going to protect yourself and your family? How are you going to be smart about it? And so that's why we are introducing, and not just introducing the theory, but actually pushing our way to become completely self-sufficient as much as possible. Because I think that's the last key to really, for us to be confident that our children can survive the coming days.
And what about ancestor veneration? It's a topic that touches up right along what we're talking about now, so we can get into that. I know both of you have spoken about the importance of ancestor veneration and that element giving your children more of that perspective and energy and pride in who they are, where they come from.
Do we have 3 more hours to talk?
Yeah, that can get pretty deep.
We want to get into the deep stuff. I mean, we're getting past 10 o'clock now, so
Yeah.
let's get into it. I think the audience is ready, right? Right, chat? Want to go a little deeper, a more esoteric, but still keep it practical.
Yeah,
Best
you
of
don't
both
have
worlds.
you don't have a paywall that we can switch over to now, do you? So
We're sharing it all. It's all the generosity of our chat.
well, for us, it may not be as esoteric as you want it to be, but for us, really, it's completely ingrained. Every single day we talk about it, we share stories, and we're so just amazingly just in awe with our children, because most children, they don't care, right? And it's so difficult for them to care about these things. And I remember on one episode on the Hen House, we were talking about this. It was on on our elders episode, when we talked about the elders. And you really need to have that bond as a grandparent with your grandchildren, so they can have that feeling of love, that connection to the older world, if you will. And as a parent, you need to embrace it, create that channel of love to your elders. And so a good way of doing that is just as simple as, cooking a special dish from my grandma's cookbook. And as we're eating it, telling them stories of when I was a kid, going to my grandparents' farm and eating this very meal, and, just telling them neat stories about their grandparents. And they would ask questions about, well, how did people live before we had electricity? How did people live? How did we all survive, in our ancestry? And we would research this together. This is becoming homework assignments for them. We've ingrained it even into schooling for them to learn about their ancestors. And, we have in our garage my grandfather's lathe. We have my grandfather's table saw. The things he built with his own 2 hands. That knowledge of how he built wood was passed down to my father. I was always in the garage with my father learning. And when Rory and I got together, Rory comes from a woodworking cabinetry background as well, from his ancestors. And so when the time came for us to start making stuff out of wood, we brought all of that knowledge together, but brought the children in as well. And it's literally ingrained in every single day. It's not something that's just celebrated at certain times of year. Though I will say, we have very strong traditions that have been carried down for a millennia. And we do carry on and carry forth those traditions. That is the core of us. We live towards that. We live towards the next season, of things to prepare for. as our ancestors did, but we also teach our children why we need to prepare for them. And we may not need to have, we may not need to have a fire to keep us warm in the winter, but it's still a good practice every single time right before winter to collect all of that firewood, to bring in a tree, a Christmas tree or a Yule log, and be able to have it as part of a tradition during the winter season to keep you warm, because you never know when you're going to need to have that knowledge. And I really think ancestors and the ancestor veneration is respecting their knowledge. They lived through so much. One time I did the math. I do have the math, so I'll keep talking while I pull it up. But it's sometimes I think when I'm in certain situations, I always think, how did my grandmother handle this? What would my grandmother have done? And sometimes, even in my dreams, they come to me in my dreams. And it's as if I'm having a conversation with them. And I tell them all of the things that are going on. And they're there for me and they help me. It's kind of like a certain form of therapy for me. So if you think about it, just 10 generations back, roughly averaging overall 30 years, because women were giving birth between the ages of 20 years to 42 years old, an average of 30 years differences of generations. That takes two to tango. That's over 1,024 ancestors, just 10 generations back. If you go all the way 30 generations back, that's about 900 years back. That's not far at all. And that's well over 1 billion ancestors that made you, that survived before you.
Yeah, that's direct lineage. That's not aunts, uncles, all that. That's a direct line from the past to you. It's pretty insane how many people had to live through the strife and troubles and tribulations of their times to survive and mate and successfully, raise children so that you could actually be here.
And you're the sum of all their choices.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And yeah, but we're taught to think that we just kind of floated in out of nowhere.
We're floating, right? And so for us raising our children, these are the life lessons that we tell them. And we stress the importance of them. They are our legacy. We are our ancestors' legacy, and they are our legacy. And we have traditions to keep our legacy alive. And we need to keep those traditions alive in order for our future to survive.
And for me, I'll take a little bit esoteric here for you. Is I like she said, all those people leading up to you, and I actually asked them for guidance. I asked them for direction and guidance, and I feel like it does give me the strength to make proper decisions and do the right things in life, and it helps me through my day. So
I have a question a little more specific, and it's a bit on the spot. Mother Hen and I in particular had an exchange, and we spoke a little about grandparents, and you would mention grandparents a few times now. Obviously, there's an incredible bond between parent and child, but there seems to be a certain recognition, maybe sometimes more personalities that align between a child and the grandparent. Because you've been talking about grandparents, and you mentioned your grandmother, Mother Hen. I was telling you that a few weeks ago, right around the time when we were first speaking around the after party's anniversary in mid-February, that I had a dream with my grandmother, and I had actually asked her for advice in my waking life just a few days before. I was very close with her. I was actually born on her birthday, and that wasn't quite my due date. And she just spoke the whole time as if it had already happened, that I was going to pop out on her birthday. And lo and behold, I did. We shared the same birthday. It's quite a unique thing. And we were very bonded. And she was a seeker in her own way. And I got a lot from her. There's definitely certain personality traits that are similar. So do you have anything to say on that? I've heard it said that there's some kind of a similarity sometimes, that something skips a generation. And again, this is not to take away at all from the extraordinary bond between parent and child directly. And I have an amazing relationship with both of my parents too. It's to take nothing away from that. But there's something about maybe just the personalities that line up a little bit more. There's a unique kind of bond between a child and the grandparent going back 2 generations. I don't know if either of you have any thoughts on that or any ideas.
Well, many of our genetics, right? Many of our genes are recessive genes. So you can take it from that lens as well, right? There is a theory that I'm thinking about where you have genetics. Just bear with me, chat. Now we'll get esoteric. So there are genetics that we inherit from each generation, and some of them do skip a generation itself. I really think it's an energy source. If you have the capability of calling an ancestor and them coming to you in a dream, you're calling them. And you need to have like an energy source in order to tap into that, in order to call them, right? So I really believe that we all have a shared energy of vibration, if you will, or an energy that's carried down genetically. And that is, it's something I'm exploring, but it's definitely something where you feel, it's just like when Rory and I met, we had this kismic spirit, this kismic attraction to one another. I think it's along those same guidelines, because it was about that same feeling as I had with certain grandparents that I had this close connection with while they were alive. I had that same feeling when I met Rory. But I can tell you, we've done our genealogy. We are not related, so that's okay. But there is something there. I would love to explore more. In fact, I haven't stopped, but there's just got to be something where, yes, you do have this bond, this special bond. And for my grandmother, she was seen as the black sheep in the family. She was the one that was very much outside of the box.
Mine too, a little bit.
Yeah.
The one I'm referring to, yeah.
Yeah. So she delved in all sorts of different interesting things. She wanted to learn. She heard that people can look at the stars and they can chart people's lives and predict things. And so she explored. And so she learned all about it and did it for all of her grandchildren and wrote out their chart. And she got me spot on. My mom was so not towards that. She was, in fact, she kept them because they were something sentimental that her mother gave to her. But she did not give that to me until I was married. And when I read it, I was flabbergasted. Everything that she had written was predicted. It was just odd. So, but my other grandparents weren't like that. And they too, like the moment I gave birth for the first time at home, I felt both of my grandmothers touching my shoulders as if they were there supporting me. So this is where, do ghosts exist? Do we have channels to open the minds to our ancestors? But I can tell you, I felt their presence. That's all I have.
Yeah. I'm just giving a moment. Yeah. It's
Let me jump in here with some.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and we'll change up with some super chats and then get back to it.
Luke super chatting. after digging down into the description. Our good friend super chatting $50. Thank you so much. What an important evening, Rory and Mother Hen. Thank you for being so open and sharing your story. It warms my heart. Much gratitude for all your advice, strength, and help to our folk. Hail you both. Thank you, TGO and NWG, as always. Thank you for being a valuable member of our community, Luke. Thank you so much. Bill Ahora, super chatting with $5. Verbo Tempestus, Mother Hen, mentioned being self-sufficient. Are you in a rural area, as I am, where you can garden and have some chickens? And before we'll just hold that question in your minds for a moment, if we can, because I think there's another one. Grizzly, super chatting with $2. Is there a difference between courting and dating? So, do you live in a rural environment where you can garden and have chickens? And is there a difference between courting and dating?
To the first question, yes and no. It's rural where we can have but it's not rural enough. I can still see my neighbor, so that's a little too close for me. We're working on that at the moment, getting a bit more land, getting spaced out a bit, and definitely we do garden, and we have had chickens in the past, and I haven't gotten us a coop up and gotten us some chickens since we moved up here last year, so that's something we're probably going to be doing, and probably rabbits as well, now that the springtime's coming around as well. And what was the next question? Oh, so that was kind of from, I guess that was from Mother Hen, if you want to answer the next question. Difference between dating and courting?
Oh, I thought that would be a man question.
Oh, it's both question. We want to hear from both of you on everything.
Geez, you know what? I think we were courting, because courting is something that's different than dating. Dating is kind of where I see it now versus where I was when I was just quote dating, right? Dating is so minuscule in comparison to courting, because dating is just wasting your time, keeping yourself busy, exploring the other sex, getting to know the other sex, getting to know what you want. But once you reach a point where you shed yourself of the what's that? Some word I'm looking for, shed yourself of the small little behaviors of fulfilling your own needs, and you actually don't want to waste your time with just people of the opposite sex that are just wasting your time. You commit yourself to then only entertain people that would be at your caliber.
Yes.
And you
Yes.
reset your priorities to what you want in life for a partner. And at that moment, it's like a natural courting thing. It's not like you look back at the Princess and the Prince Disney show where they're, quote, courting each other. It's not like that. It's more like the beautiful peacock and that natural dance. I did mention Rory gave me this special look. To me, that would be like his mating call, if you will, his courtship, his entering into courtship. I gave him a pleasing look back. It was very intimate. And I would say that is more of a courting situation than just dating.
Yeah, I would agree. It kind of goes back to the way I described it earlier of dating is just like, oh, hey, I think that person's physically attractive. Hey, let's go out and get a drink sometime. It's like a function of what you do as part of society that we've become trained to do. It's not really meant for anything more than that. It's not meant for. It's really, we've kind of been trained in our modern day life that that's what you do. That's meant to find a mate, a proper mate, but it's really not. Like, you want to be looking for the right person. And obviously the younger you are, things like that, and obviously you got to go through that phase of figuring out what that right person is for you. And so obviously dating is a function that has to happen, but I think it's very much overused these days. It's kind of just like, oh, I haven't been out on a date in a week, I should go and do that. It's like it's like at this point it's kind of equated to like changing the filter in your fridge, like, oh, it's been long enough, I should do that. It's just something you do as a function. People don't put enough thought into it and really think about what the purpose of it is. It should be to find a mate, and when it's to really find a mate properly, and you lose all the kind of modern things that have been put on top of it, I consider that courting.
Courting is more artful,
yeah,
and more holistic. We've talked a little about etiquette sometimes. We're talking about it with Jeff of White Art Collective. Etiquette doesn't mean that we all always have to be stiff and prim and proper and not fun. There's a certain magic to ritual, to little things that add to the theater of an experience, in this case, a man and a woman doing that dance of courtship, that actually make it more so when you go about some of this etiquette and that ritualization. It makes it more that you're experiencing something that could be out of a storybook or out of a movie. I like to do things that imbue, we were talking about the little things before, even the little things with that sense of the sacred. And you have to have a certain awareness to appreciate that. Everything in the modern world has conspired to hammer out that sense of the sacred or ritual in anything, not only the little things, but even things that are bigger and we think should be thought of as sacred. So I've myself have kind of always been on that page. I never really understood the functional dating as you're talking about. And even when younger, it wasn't, people could believe me, people could not believe me, but even when I was younger, it wasn't just about, oh, she's pretty. Like I wanted there to be some kind of a connection. But let's talk a little about particularly, so we're all American, but I'm always interested to hear people's perspectives on roots. You two are very attuned to this, so I'm interested to hear your opinions in particular and your practices about where your families go back to in Europe and what that means, how you square that with a sense of identity, both being American, Amerikaner, white American, that's an ethnicity, of course. There's different regional variations, but then of course also being of European descent. I'm sure you have some idea of where your family goes back to, as you were talking about. So how do you square all of that? What does it mean to you? What kind of folk practices do you continue, or what are you hoping to learn more about your longer heritage into Europe?
Yeah. I kind of like the way that you laid it out once, and it's kind of very similar to that, where it's layers. It's, you have yourself, your family, then your local region, and then you go back to your more to your genetic roots. So it's kind of, that's your expression. So obviously I'm originally from the South, so I consider myself a Southerner of America. And then it goes from there to my European roots of, Northwestern European, mostly English, and then to the broader European collective, if you will. And I'm very much in the learning process of kind of what it was that my ancestors did for religious practices and rites and rituals, and trying to work as many of those into my life as possible to see if they function for me. Because I know once I went through a long time of when it comes to the kind of the religious rites of not really even knowing that it was a thing, that, hey, these traditional European religions, people still have this information. These things are still around. You can research them. You can look into this. It was always just, hey, Christian or not, or hey, maybe you were a Buddhist, that was like, that's all there really was, when I grew, that's all I knew. And those didn't really click with me personally. It just didn't jive. And so I just was lost in that way. But once I discovered that these things existed, and the things that I have instituted within my life, it just immediately clicked. Like once I realized that these things are around, I started, reading into into our folk and what they practice, it immediately clicked with me and resonated. This is true, and this is whole, and this is
Anything in particular that clicked you could share?
Well, I think that certain things like like the noble virtues, non-noble virtues. I think that when you read the Have 'em All, when you read the Eddas, when you read those things, they resonate with you as a European in a way that biblical texts never really did. They just didn't. I always found myself, I remember getting in trouble even as a kid in like Sunday school, getting in trouble from like questioning certain things within biblical texts because they just didn't jive. Like I was always like, it just doesn't, what? That just doesn't sound right. That doesn't work for me. Just for me personally, I'm not hating on anybody who is a Christian. Obviously that's to each their own for your own religious faith, but it just didn't work with me. So, and I had this connection and resonance that I just never felt with any other religious practices. And I remember in that kind of interim of finally kind of growing older and saying, this Christianity doesn't work with me. And this was my early teenage years, looking at even Eastern philosophies, looking around, looking at what are the other things out there? What happened? What exists? And it, they didn't resonate with me either. I did learn some good things as far as from a philosophical point of view. There are some good things to take away from certain religion, from certain philosophical Eastern philosophies, if you will, but they didn't resonate with me in a way that felt whole and true on kind of a spiritual level. And but yeah, I'm not one to sit here and kind of talk to people too much about my practices and things like that, because I'm still in that learning process. I feel like it's each person's individual journey. I would just say, if it's something that kind of interests you, just look into who your people are and research what they did and what their faith was and the practices and rites that they did, and see if that stuff works for you. Try it out.
Yeah, I'm a seeker too, and I can definitely relate to you about when I was younger exploring the different philosophies and religions of the world. But there's a difference. People really need to keep this crucial distinction in mind. There's a difference between learning about things that might be useful academically or interesting because they're somewhat exotic and different, versus that click, the kind of click we've been talking about all night that began when Mother Hen and Rory relayed the story about their meeting and their love at first sight experience. When you hear, even if you don't have to be studied, like Rory was saying, he's still exploring this, he's still learning. You don't have to be some expert that can get up and write a book or give a 2-hour lecture on our ancestors' practices and things like that. It's that inner click inside where you just recognize something, and different than the academic interest, different than the exotic interest that I was speaking about, there's that click of, yes, this is home. This feels like home. And it could be the clues that give you this feeling could be in the details. I think that there are a lot of people who might not even be conscious of this that respond to even the names in things that are in popular culture, like Lord of the Rings, J.R.R. Tolkien's work, him being a scholar of languages and working in different European languages into just the way he named his characters or the place names in Lord of the Rings. Just saying a name like Aragorn, it just feels right. It feels right when I say it. Now, that might not be an actual thing, but it's still related to the way our ancestors spoke, the language they used, the vibrations of the words, the spells, if you'll even go that far. So I think that even that, the way that our fairy tales, when we have fairy tales in old Europe, it's a temperate climate. That's where we come from. It's a lush forest and mountains and castles. There's a reason why that captures our imagination in a way that, again, you may be a curious, open-minded person that reads the literature and philosophy of other parts of the world and samples it and makes it your own. You have to be careful with that. But there are people that do that. I was that type myself. I don't begrudge that as long as you keep it in the proper perspective. But it doesn't have that click. It doesn't have that click of this is home. This is whole. and I want to get more into that, but I want to get Mother Hen's perspectives first. But I think there's a connection between this word we use, hail, sometimes. I want to do an article about this and cognates of the Old English word hail and whole and healthy, because that's something that means a lot to me. And in my own experiences, when I meditate, this term whole or wholeness is what I focus on before I was even aware of hail and health and wholeness and old cognates of this word hail being related. And of course, we sometimes use this greeting now. I see it in the chat. Hail, no white guilt. Hail, the great order. Hail, Mother Hen. Hail, Rory of Verbo Tempestus. Are we saying health? Are we saying wholeness? Are we recognizing that we're whole again when we're connecting to this ancestral connection? But Mother Hen, any thoughts on what we've been talking about, what Rory addressed, what the European connections mean to you, what you know about it, how you're practicing it in your household?
Do we have another 3 hours? No, I'm joking.
We're about to go. I think we're 2 minutes away from going into our first overdrive.
Yeah,
But
so
Jason will keep us abreast of that.
okay. So, well, I come from a Great Britain, almost half and half Great Britain and Germanic background. My roots do, and very much stayed within those lines from previous days. So, from my grandmother, she had, just to give you an example, one of my grandmothers on the German side had she was the seamstress of the family. And she was the one that made all of the wedding quilts, the baby quilts, and all of the quilts needed for each family member in the extended family. And she passed down that knowledge to me. When she passed it down, she told me of certain patterns that we use to tell the stories of our lives when we make these quilts. And so when you look at the older quilts that were handed down to me, I can actually read the stories of my ancestors, which is very fascinating for me. I was raised with genealogy first. Genealogy is important. Genealogy is important. You know, it was ingrained in me. But it's interesting. I'm going to go very selfish, and I never do, but here I am being selfish. I started getting to a certain age in life, and I noticed that my body wasn't digesting certain foods properly, and my back was starting to hurt, and my whole health was going down in the exact same way that my mother was. So I called her and I asked her, and she says, "Oh, it sounds like you have that genetic disorder that my father had and I have." I said, "Really? What is it?" And so she told me it was some scientific name. I started researching it, and really it's just our bodies weren't evolved to produce these certain foods. And if you go back to this generation upon how many people it's taken.
Process.
Yes. So your body has to evolve for a certain amount of time, quite a few hundreds of years to be introduced to these foods, just so you can process it properly. And I wasn't able to process these foods. So I started to say, you know what? I'm going to start eating like my ancestors and see if that improves my health. And so through the knowledge of all this genealogy that I had, I started researching, all of these great writings about, the British people. That's a very difficult topic to raise because of all these different intermixings. But I had such a high percentage of Germanic, genetics in me. So I started researching and all of the Germanic tribes and their migrations and how they survived through all of these different seasons and what they had available right in front of them to eat. And so I just started eating like that. And I put Rory on this diet and all of the kids on this as well. And I'm going to tell you, I have lost a lot of weight. From all 5 babies, I weigh less than I did when I got married. I'm finally at the ideal weight for my height, if you will. And I do not have a hurt back anymore. It's just been so beneficial to us. And so I really do believe, you know, it's full circle. And I know I didn't properly answer your question, but that's just, I learned so much about my ancestors just by doing this research. It was so much fun. So did you want me to answer any other component of your question there?
I mean, we trust it's really wherever it takes you, whatever it sparks in you. I welcome you to share something else if you have something on your mind right now.
No, I mean, that's there. I think I'm going to be going into this in the next season or next chapter of the Hen House. So this is something I'm exploring mentally to communicate out right now.
Well, I at least want to ask you about the spring equinox coming up, but I believe Jason has a question he wants to ask you first.
Are you all willing to do an overdrive with us? 15 more minutes here on the after party.
Yeah, I could spare 15. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, we know you have a lot of kids there, so
Well, luckily,
you tell us if you need to go, but we could definitely continue a little bit more.
no, luckily they've actually all stayed asleep. So let's cross our fingers that it stays that way, and we will we'll stay here for another 15. That's fine with me.
All right, then we're doing an overdrive, folks. Things just got a little bit more exciting. Let me start it off with a couple of super chats. Sarah Fix 26 super chatting with $20 and writing folk tide. Thank you so much for that. Sean, being a miner and digging down into that description under the video and super chatting $5. Thank you very much for that. Roy Danton, super chatting $19.99. Each time I hear people talking about rural life, it reminds me of the amazing childhood that I had growing up in the countryside. Good to know that it still exists, even in these crazy times that we are in today. Thank you very much for that, Roy. And Laura also digging down into the description, finding that familiar location and super chatting $30. What an uplifting stream for our community, especially in light of recent events. Thank you, Rory and Mother Hen, for sharing so much of yourselves with us. This has been just delightful. Thank you,
Here.
and Jared. Indeed. Thank you, Jason and Jared, for being hosts with the mosts. Thank you very much, Laura. I'll pass it back so we can get these final couple questions answered as we have about 10 more minutes left.
I don't know where to begin. Maybe, I mean, we might have to do double overdrive. I don't know if that's getting too crazy, but we'll take it one step at a time. I mentioned the spring equinox. So Mother Hen, and then of course, Rory, if you have anything to add, the spring equinox is upon us in a few days. And I know this is something significant for you. I know you're preparing something with Hen House, but if you could just talk about its significance and what you're preparing and any wisdom about the spring and the return of balance at this time you'd like to share with the people listening.
I think this spring equinox is one of the most important ones in our lives. We've all been feeling a shift coming, and we're coming out of the winter. And this is a moment for all of us to see the new beginning, the new life, see the new birth and where we can go as a community, but as ourselves as well. When you see spring, you hear Easter is right around the corner, but Easter dates back farther than where you think it is. It's been a tradition dating back very, 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 very far. And they've always recognized spring as that new birth, that fertility. You go outside right now and you see a whole bunch of little sproutlets popping up from the ground. It's so beautiful to see new life beginning. But I think from a motivational speech perspective, take this opportunity. You get new air, You get refreshed, beautiful weather. It should be a very positive time, a celebration for you. You're given a chance every year to start afresh. You can shed off whatever history that you want to shed off, and you can just be who you want to be. And I think that that is the most important thing. It's not about, I don't know where else to go with that, because that is, to me, that is what this means.
So you think this is one of the most important in recent memory?
I think for our collective generations, because, you know, if you look back, there's always been 100-year, you know, milestones or 1,000-year milestones. There's been a whole bunch of different milestones, and we have been coming to a pivotal point. And this spring equinox is it. It is our pivotal moment to really change the shift, shed all of the negative energy, and really focus on the positive, and really getting to a wholesome self and a wholesome family and a wholesome community. And that will only help us collectively towards white well-being, towards building better, stronger communities, and being able to kind of, I don't know the word that I'm looking for. Rory, do you know what I'm trying to say?
Just working on that cohesion and self-change. And I don't know, I was kind of focused on what I was going to like kind of add to it. So I kind of
It seems like this is a perfect show to have before the equinox, which is in the Northern Hemisphere, of course, on Wednesday the 19th, it looks like, in a few days. We might have to do something for that. But yes, Rory, any thoughts you had on that? And then if we can tie this to the word Mother Hen just used, wholesome, because I feel like that word's been hijacked, and I want to get your thoughts on this concept of wholesomeness and restoring that as well.
Oh, absolutely. Wednesday is going to be the 20th, by the way, for you guys, just so you know. And that will be the release. That will be the we're going to have Hraffenfolk, a new project that we're doing. We're launching that day as well. That's why I know it's the 20th.
Wait. Since you mentioned it, what is this new project?
It's a new project with some other great content creators that are all part of our folk, and we're going to be just doing all pro-European stuff, teaching people about their folk practices, as well as learning skills, as all kinds of just pro-European stuff, and all from a positive perspective. So
That's what we're about, and it's
gonna be great.
appropriate. That's strange. I Google autofilled the equinox, and it was saying Wednesday was the 19th, but you're right. It looks like it's the 20th in 2019.
That date is burned in my brain just because we have that release date that day. That's why I was like,
Wednesday. Well, no, it's great that you're the tap that is right before it. Very fitting.
But I would just add to on top of the great stuff that Mother Him's talking about. I think that what we had our last episode about self-reliance and self sufficiency, and I think that this is the time right now. It's a perfect time with springtime coming to learn to be self-sufficient in a way. Learn to grow something, even if you're in an urban environment. Grow some tomatoes or something on your patio. Learn to reconnect with nature in some way and become more self-sufficient with your caloric intake, and then be more self-reliant in your, because the being self-sufficient helps you gain the confidence to be more self-reliant. So we did a great episode on that. Was it yesterday? It seems like it was a couple days ago now, but I'm pretty sure it was yesterday.
It was yesterday.
It all blends sometimes.
It really does.
And any thoughts on that term, wholesome, and related to what I was saying a little bit before about health, hale, whole?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, again, we did a great episode on this as well with the wholesomeness. I think that is being whole. Like when, at least for us, when we're being wholesome and we're doing things that we consider to be wholesome, we feel whole. whether that's within our family unit or building our community, helping our neighbors, we feel complete and whole. And we do these things because they help others, but they also give you that self, that internal self well-being and feeling of completeness. Because and I know for there was, many years when I was younger that it was just kind of this kind of selfish way of living, not intentionally. It was just like that was what you did. You worried about yourself first, and you always worry about yourself no matter what. Kind of screw everybody else, if you will. And it's like I just always didn't feel right. It always, internally you don't feel right about it. But if you're helping your folk and your people, and once you have a family, helping your family, then you feel whole. And to me, that's wholesomeness.
Well said. Well, that might be a place to begin the process of tapping out so we can hear from the both of you what you're doing next, what you're working on. And I know I've heard you mention some projects that are in the works. So if we could, please, we will start with ladies first, begin with Mother Hen, find out what she's up to, what she's working on next, and where can people find you?
Well, people can find me on Twitter. I believe the link is in the description. I only have Twitter and YouTube, and I also have Minds if you can find me. But tomorrow night, I will be doing a special spring equinox episode on the Hen House with Big Cat Kayla, hosted on the Verbo Tempestus channel. And I pop in and help the Verbo Tempestus live, either in the chat. And if Rory's lovely or co-host with the most, Kaiser Wayne, if he's not available, I do sometimes sub in for him as well. So, but other than that, I'm at home or I'm within my neighborhood or my normal community IRL, helping people out. So.
That's fantastic. Rory, what about you, sir?
Yeah, we've changed up the schedule a little bit on the Verbo live shows. We do those only Thursdays now rather than just Tuesdays and Thursdays. Kind of make sure that we get a good solid show out there once a week. Doing another show that we just started on Verbo called The Conduit with Dave Martell. And it's fun. And it's all about just esoteric stuff, kind of out there fun stuff, kind of, get outside the box. Let's talk about something a little different and have some fun with that. As well as, like I said, starting next week on the Equinox, we're going to be having that new project launching with some other great content creators. Some of them are here in your chat right now, and the great people within our community that are wanting to kind of get together and put together wholesome and folkish stuff and promote positiveness within our people.
What is the name of that new show launching?
The channel is Hroffenfolk, and
could you maybe spell that in the chat for people?
Yeah, I will post that for people in the chat to make it easier for you.
What does that term mean? Hroffenfolk,
like the Raven folk.
Okay. And who are the content creators that will be joining you that you mentioned?
Yeah, look, they're the great Volkfire linked it for me there, so I didn't have to do that. She's going to be part of the content creators.
Oh, nice. I see her a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, very cool.
And Grizz as well. And Mother Hen's going to be putting stuff out there, as well as myself. And we got some other guys and from some other channels. Like we got a good list and lineup of people, and we'll be adding some more people as we go along and kind of filling out that schedule. And just wanted to have a lot of good content, positive, and not just positive, but things people can learn from as well. So we're going to have cooking shows and different things like that. The show I'm producing for the network is all about homesteading and starting up, figuring out how to homestead, as well as we're going to be kind of following us through that process. So that'll be fun.
Well, this is all important stuff, and we thank you for doing it, and we're going to be in touch.
I appreciate you having us on. We had a great time with you guys tonight, and as always, it's always good to talk to you guys. We always have a great conversation, and we look forward to doing it again in the future.
Thank you so much, brother. Jared, where can people find you? What are you up to? Where can you, what are you going to be working on next?
Well, first of all, just to wet the audience's whistle now in the chat and certainly in the replay, just consider we didn't get to ask Mother Hen about the significance of her Maria Orsic picture. We didn't get to talk to Rory and Mother Hen more specifically about their diet. Mother Hen gave us this titillating bit of how she changed her diet, but we didn't get specifically into that. Some people in the chat had some more questions about their relationship, their romantic relationship, and some more details around that if they'd like to share. So we're going to obviously have to talk again, but this was a great introduction to anyone in our chat that might not have known of Rory and Mother Hen, and they definitely should now. We have a lot of similar goals and a lot of overlap in our interests, and I'm so glad to know you too. And I really look forward to continuing to do things together, learning from each other, and building something together, building something positive together. I want to see our audiences 100% overlap. There should be anyone who's with us should be with you and vice versa. I think it makes a lot of sense. So I want to leave the audience with that. Thank the two of you. We have spoken to these two before. Rory did join us on the After Hours, the second stream on our birthday show. And then that was the 22nd, right? February 22nd. So yeah, I do think that was 3 weeks ago, not quite a month ago. It wasn't quite a month ago, as I said in the beginning. And then also both Mother Hen and Rory came on for the third stream that night because we had to go crazy and do 10 hours of streaming. It's late night somewhere. And I think we're due to do another episode of that soon, the radio show where everyone's audio only. It's a little more intimate. And we did get into some more things esoteric. That one was on my channel, so you could check the playlists. Always check the websites and the playlists. I have everything as organized as I can for you. I try to make it easily navigable for everybody. But on that note, my site is thegreatorder.com. Everything that I do goes through that. So whether it's these shows, my solo videos, t-shirts, and poems, and articles, and all sorts of things and ways to support, my website is really the one-stop shop where you can find that. I would like to highlight that I was on Red Ice, and that was published last week, my conversation with Henrik. The first part is on YouTube. The second part is behind the paywall on the Red Members website. We went for another hour and a half, and it really gets into all sorts of things. It's a good introduction, and at the same time goes pretty deep. Some things I never really got to explore in public about what I'm about and where I'm coming from. And if that sounds interesting to you, I really do recommend that you check it out, that you share it. I do hope some of you are Red Ice members. And if you're not, please do look into subscribing. Henrik and Lana are some of our greatest people. They're doing amazing work. It was quite an honor to speak with Henrik. Red Ice, him and Lana have been a big influence on me. And yeah, it was just a powerhouse of an interview. So I'm very happy that we were able to do that. And again, I really do encourage everyone to check it out and to share it. But we will be back soon. Please share, sub and follow on our social media, on my social media, on Jason's social media, No White Guilt, so that you can be kept abreast of all of these different things. We're doing a lot of exciting stuff coming up. But again, Rory, Mother Hen, thank you. Oh, I do want to say, to reiterate again, on Verbo Tempestus, the show Rory does, his main co-host is Kaiser Wayne, and we'll be speaking to him as well because he's part of the team. But we did want to get the perspective of the married couple tonight for this show. And I think it was good to do before the equinox, like I said, or equinox. It sounds like Mother Hen's pronouncing it equinox. So I don't know if it's a different way to say that. I don't know if it's regional. But in any event, I wish you all well. I send my love, and I hand it to my good friend Jason to close us out for now.
Thank you, good sir. Did you mention that tomorrow night we're going to be on White Art Collective?
No, I figured there's so much going on.
There's so much going on, so many things going on. Well, the first thing I want to do is I want to thank the both of you deeply from the bottom of my heart. We already have a huge outwelling of love from the chat. They want you back. We will absolutely be inviting you. So if you don't show back up, folks, it's not our fault. They definitely are going to be invited back. It was splendid speaking with you both. And we absolutely look forward to doing it again next time. I want to thank you both. I want to thank Jared for all the hard work that he does to make this show splendid, entertaining, and educational for you all. He's always digging in, doing research, and bringing things to my attention that we can discuss that are not only interesting, but encouraging when we actually delve into them and explore those topics. So I really want to thank him for that. I want to thank Kat, who was in the chat today. I saw her doing some moderating. So I thank her for being here, for her insights and her helpfulness when it comes to making sure that we don't fall prey to Gresham's law. Tomorrow night, Jared, George, and I at roughly 10 o'clock are going to be on White Art Collective with Jeff, and we'll be tweeting about that. You'll be able to find us over there.
Just to note, he's starting before us, but we're just joining in the latter part with some poetry.
Precisely, yeah. Jared will be reading, I think, reading some of his poems. I will be reading some of Prometheus Rising from my book, Born Guilty. And I want to give out some salutes and spotlights before we actually get out of here. I just saw Josh Randall super chat. Missed the stream, but I look forward to listening later. You're going to love it. I saw Subjective in the chat today. I saw Camdis Europa, Jennifer P, Stephen, Lisa P, Volkfire, Coconut. I salute you all. Thank you for being here. And thank you, obviously, back to Joshua Randall for that kind super chat of $10. We have some other super chats as well. We have Bear Lynchschmidt, $5. Thank you for sharing this great folk stream, harking back to our ancestors. Thank you very much for that, Bear. Digging down into the description, Grizzly Saxon donates $5. What we are doing with this and other channels, focusing on pro-us, pro-European, white, positive, traditional, and uplifting content is what our people need more than literally anything else. This is a new dawn, a new rising sun for our people. Thank you very much for that.
Yes, if I could just interject what I said at the beginning about comparing it to today's news, please do keep that in mind. And I just want to add,
indeed,
Rory and Mother Hen might get a kick out of this. Our friend Spartan Warrior Queen, staying up so late, past 4 a.m. in Greece. Thank you. We love you, sister. Said this has now become her favorite tap episode.
Splendid. Splendid.
Awesome. Well, she's a great lady. I really enjoy her. We've talked before, and while we see her in the chats, we always engage with each other. She's always got great positive momentum that goes with her. So thank you very much for that.
She definitely does. Mother Hen, you were going to say something?
I was just going to say that I love Spartan Warrior Queen, and I love her so much, and she's an amazing woman.
She is indeed. She is indeed a great boon to our community. Let me see. We have Chuck Ford also mining down into the description to super chat $4, writing great stuff, everyone. Thanks, Rory and Mother Hen, for coming on to the show. Thank you, Chuck Ford. We have Peaceful Sunset super chatting down deep into the description with $20, writing great show. Hope to hear from you all again soon. No need to go overtime just to read this. Thanks, though. And finally, we have Roy Danton again, super chatting $50 down deep in the description. Thank you so much, Roy. Writing, just wanted to say thank you all for the amazing work that you've been doing. I thank you all, everyone who super chatted, everyone who participated in the chat today, everyone who asked questions. I thank you all for being valuable members of our rapidly growing community for white well-being, and we are looking forward to seeing you all again next time.